Welcome back to Exotic Car Play Place, everybody. Thanks for joining again today on this beautiful Friday morning. Today we are going to discuss Audi depreciation. Look at some numbers, give you some great examples of some popular models, and summarize at the end what we think is actually happening with these different models. We'll also share with you the comparison between that and the more or less industry standard average. So let's get into it now. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. And today... So before we get into giving you some popular models and some examples of depreciation on these popular models within the Audi world, let's talk about the average depreciation per vehicle. Between 40 and 50% on the industry average goes to depreciation within the first 5 years. A quick calculation is done by taking 20% of the value off the top. Then the second year, you would take another 10% off the residual, and the third year, you would take another 10% off the residual of that. And this just keeps going down and down until after 5 years, you have approximately 50% of its original value. Now, that generally applies for average vehicles, but Audi is typically considered a luxury brand, which is the upscale version of a Volkswagen. However, this comes at a cost. Luxury vehicles like Audis, Benz, and Beamers often take a much bigger hit on depreciation for the simple fact that people fear for the extensive costs that they might incur when vehicles run out of warranty. That's common across industry. So now, based on that known average of a 50% depreciation in first 5 years, let's make some comparisons to some very common cars within the Audi world. Firstly, what we're going to do is do a 3-year comparison and a 5-year comparison and look at the depreciation rate on both of those for each one of these models, and we'll review 5. So before we get into some examples, let's go online and take a quick look. First model that we're going to talk about is the Audi A4, which is a very popular, lower cost, lower end car within the Audi world. And of course, those base MSRP of those cars back in 2015 were about $44,000. With that said, scrolling through autotrader.com, it's pretty easy to find the average, the actual intermediate or the mean, if you will, and that happens to be around 17 grand with cars of moderate mileage. So when you actually crunch the numbers, that yields about a 38% retention value. So that means it lost about 62% of its value in the first 5 years. Horrendous. How about a 3-year-old Audi A4? These retailed new at about $46,000 base price, and you can find them lots, as you find on AutoTrader, for about $23,000 US, which yields about a 50% retention value, which in 3 years, this Audi A4 is actually only retaining what the industry standard suggests is normal for a 5-year time frame. So they are obviously taking a significant hit buying an A4. So let's move down to the next one. How about the Audi A8? In 2015, these cars were worth an MSRP of about 78 grand. And now, again, looking through the Auto Trader, you find lots of models averaging about $28,000 US, which basically means it's only worth about 35% of its original value after 5 years. That is a severe hit. Partially that's due to the fact that this is a higher end premium example of the brand. And again, as such, more technology goes into these and people become more afraid of owning these after warranty. How about a 2017? So we talk about a car that's typically now 3 years old. When it was new, it retailed about $83,000, and now you're finding lots of versions of this car for about $36,000 US. That basically means these A8s only hold about 43% of their original value after 3 years. Another punishing blow for depreciation on the premium Audi cars. So you think this is a bit of a trend? Well, I think not. We're going to give you an example now, the Audi R8, and we'll use the V10 as an example because it's consistent. There was a V10 available for 2015 as well as 2017, and in 2015 these cars were worth about 158 grand. But now as we scour the Auto Trader again, what we find is they're worth about 110 grand after 5 years, which ultimately translates to about 69% retention value on the R8, which is ultimately their supercar. Proof that these cars really do hold their value. So what about the 2017, a 3-year-old car that cost about 165 grand, brand new for a V10 coupe? Well, still scouring the Auto Trader, you're finding some examples at around $130,000, which means that they're holding about 80% of their original value after 3 years. That is actually a pretty solid investment for a car that sits and looks pretty for 8 months of the year in your garage. So let's talk about another model, but this one's a little more popular by today's standards. Lots of people are getting into SUVs, so I bet you were thinking, how much does the SUV, the Q5, actually depreciate? Because this is in fact one of the more popular models in the Audi brand. So let's talk about a 5-year-old car. So 2015, that car had an MSRP of about $39,000 as a base price. Now you're finding them all over the Auto Trader for about 19 grand, which means it holds its value at about 49% of its original value, suggested of industry standard, which is surprising because it is a luxury vehicle. But again, that's sort of proof that SUVs are very popular and people can always use a nice lower cost used SUV because the price of a premium version can be quite extensive for people that just need it for utilitarian purposes. Now, what about 2017 when those base MSRP was about 41 grand, and now you're finding all over the Auto Trader these cars are selling for around $25,000 US. This basically means it holds about 61% of its value after 3 years. Not phenomenal, but solid nonetheless. Again, more in line with the industry standard. So let's talk about a fifth example, and that is the luxury premium Rennsport, the RS7, which is the premium high-performance car that you're finding in the Audi brand, aside from their supercar. Now, back in 2015, these cars retailed for about $107,000 for the base RS7. Now you're finding them all over the Auto Trader for about 60 grand, which means they retain about 56% of their original value. Actually, not a bad investment from a premium high-performance sports sedan. And then how about the 3-year-old version? So in 2017, now we talk about when it was new, it retailed at about $111,000, and now you can find them again, as I say, about 70 grand all over the Auto Trader. This ultimately yields about a 63% retention value after 3 years. So ultimately, what this really suggests is the premium versions, the high-performance versions, do tend to hold a little better value than their lower-cost brethren. For example, the Rennsport cars, you've got lots of options for the TTRS, RS3, RS4, RS5, RS6, RS7. Lots of great versions of these cars, and of course I would expect typically anything from the Rennsport series to hold a little bit better premium in terms of a percentage. As well, the Audi R8 is really the top of the litter for premium holding power for resale. So what's the general message here? The message is, these are luxury cars. They take a hit because they're expensive to fix, costly to maintain. When they're out of warranty, nobody wants them. They're harder to sell, and as a result, the prices drive down. Also due to the fact that a lot of these vehicles are leased, and once they come off of leases, not unlike BMW, where many of these cars flood the market, and it ultimately drives prices down because of the volumes on the system. If you want to learn more about Audi reliability, be sure to click on the link over here, a recent video I just created. As well, if you want to subscribe to the channel and you want to follow more great videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button over here, as well as the notification bell. We'll let you know when the next great video appears. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.